Okay, so we're going to be starting, or not starting, but continuing what we've been talking about, King Hezekiah. I thought it was important to kind of go back and look at Isaiah, look at the one of the passages, so that you can kind of get an idea of what they were dealing with, kind of what was going on with them. Uh, so when you're looking at the uh, chapter 30, this is when Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, came down. Chapter 30 is when Hezekiah was thinking about going to Egypt to get help. Remember, one of the qualifications of the king was to make sure that you don't make treaties that you're trying to protect yourself. God says, I will protect you if you'll just trust me. Trust is the key to a relationship with God. And every sin, everything that we do, everything that kind of goes, the messes we get ourselves into usually is centered around trust. It kind of boils down to that, that basic idea. So when you look at chapter 30, verse 1, you have God speaking to Hezekiah and the people in Judah. Woe to you rebellious children, saith the Lord, take counsel, but not of me. Boy, is that intimidating? Mm-hmm. How many times have we? So that's being kings. Like I said, we're trying to learn how to be kings. So we have a visitor. So hi, how's it going? So as we're looking at this, we're trying to understand how to be a king in God's kingdom. So God's kingdom doesn't operate like man's kingdom. It doesn't operate with the same ideas, with the same thought process. What's logical to us is illogical to God, and what's illogical to God is logical to us. And it goes back to that verse where God says, your ways are not my ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are higher than your ways. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. So, he's seeing from a perspective that we just cannot absorb. You see a lot of that like in Hebrews 4 where it says, you will not enter my rest. Our thinking doesn't match up a lot. But when you look at this, so when you go to from verse 1 down to verse 14, it's him. It's God talking to them. I don't want to read the whole passage. You can go back and read it for yourself. But it's the whole idea of you're getting ready to go down and make deals with the Egyptians, thinking that they can save you. But God's saying it's not going to happen that way. It's not going to work out like you think. So Hezekiah, to his credit, he considers it, but then rejects the idea. So we know he doesn't go for the Egyptians, and we know he doesn't go to get that help. So that's a good, obviously, but he's the fact that he's even considering it kind of gets God's, I don't want to say ire. What's a good word?
Yeah.
Is that a good word?
Yeah.
Because it's not like he's okay. I know God gets angry, but it's kind of like it's not like I'm going to get angry and I'm looking so forward to whacking you. That's.
It's not like that.
No, it's not like that. But he's like, it's almost like you're frustrating me.
Yeah.
Here I'm giving you, I've shown you all this stuff, and now, when the enemy comes threatening, now all of a sudden you fall apart like a cheap suit. Which I think I'm talking about myself now. So I don't know if anybody else identifies with that or not. But he says in verse 15, it says, "For thus saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength, and ye would not." But ye said, No, for we will flee upon horses, therefore shall ye flee, and we will ride upon the swift, therefore shall they that pursue you be swift. 1,000 shall flee at the rebuke of one, and the rebuke of 5 shall ye flee, till you be left as a beacon upon the mountain, atop of a mountain, as an ensign on a hill. So he's basically saying, look, this is going to be the opposite of what you think. If you go down there and you make an alliance with them and you want them to protect you, then I'm going to opt out, and I'm actually going to flip the table on you, and this small army is going to defeat this big army. So the things that you're building up, but the ensign, or you'll be a example or a billboard. You'll be a billboard on the top of a hill. You'll be an advertisement for don't do it like this. Yeah. Anybody else feel like you feel like you're a billboard for don't let this happen to you? But verse 18, it begins something that's really cool. It begins, so if you find yourself in this situation, what should you do? So as a king, as spiritual kings in God's kingdom, how do we correct that? So what's the plan of action? You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
The solution to the problem.
yeah, it's like when you look at, okay, so King Hezekiah, he's bringing worship, he's bringing the country back to this great position, and God begins to bless, God begins to provide, and then all of a sudden God allows the enemy to come in, and actually he pulls him in. How does that? It sounds so weird that God would actually pull the enemy in closer.
Well, he did that to show him what he was going to do.
Right. So if God's bringing the enemy in, that's a good sign that he's wanting to flex his muscles.
Right.
So if the enemy's close in on me, if I feel the enemy breathing down my neck, what should I say instead of what I normally say? I should say, oh wow, God's about to do something.
Mm-hmm.
God's about to be something that I've never seen before. It's scary, it's exciting, but that's not how we react. How do we react? We react by going, oh man, I need to do something. I need to be active. I need to do this stuff so that. But he wants to show himself.
Oh, what you're saying is like there's times we end up doing things under our own power.
Yes.
That's where we get in trouble.
That's
right.
where we get in trouble, when we make our own way.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if God's telling you to move, then you move. But
Wait.
yeah. But in verse 18, it starts the prescriptions. It says, "And therefore will the Lord wait." Now, I want to stop there. I'm really going to agonize over this text going forward here. Do you know what that means? That God wants to wait?
He's patient. He wants you to see.
Isn't that crazy? Why would God be that gracious?
Does that go back to
Because he loves us.
It speaks a lot about his character,
Mm-hmm.
about how patient he is with us as believers, and us in that he's given authority to. He's waiting that he might. He's waiting that we might.
Get our act together.
Yeah. Trust him.
Trust him.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting to, yeah, exactly. Sorry, my phone distracted me a little bit, got me off my thought process. But he wants to wait to be gracious to us, so that he may be gracious to you, and therefore will he be exalted. So the fact that he waits and he's gracious exalts him. Now that's a prescription for us as well, because if we're going to imitate him, if we're going to be like him, if we're going to mimic him, then that should be the way we are. Patient and gracious. How hard is that?
It's very hard.
Very hard. Very hard to be very hard to be patient, very hard to be gracious. And therefore will he be exalted, that he may have mercy upon you. So look at the qualities that God's exhibiting. Patience, graciousness, mercy, not giving you what you should get. For the Lord is a God of judgment. Blessed are they that wait for him. So now his judgment, gets a bad rap, but he's just.
Well, my version says justice.
Yeah. So it's correct actions.
Mm.
So then God's expecting us to be reciprocating, right? And we're going to wait on him now, right? He's going to wait on us so we can reciprocate. Let me give you a great example of this. What do most people want from God when they look at salvation or daily actions? They want freedom, right? They want to be free to do what they want to do, right? Without anybody. So it's like, God, why don't you just leave me alone? Let me do what I want to do. Or they look at God as a big piggy bank, right? That I want something from you. Give me what I want. But what is God wanting from us is the same thing he gives to us. So he gives us freedom. Have you ever thought about giving God freedom from yourself? From you to him? Giving him freedom. And what does that look like? It means, just like we say we want to have freedom to do what we want to do, why not give him freedom to do what he wants to do? So how dangerous or how uncomfortable does it feel to say, God, I give you freedom to do whatever you want? That's rough, because and when I was growing up, it was always, I'm afraid to commit to God because he'll send me to Africa. You ever hear that?
Mm-hmm. Something uncomfortable.
Yeah, he'll put me in a real uncomfortable situation. I'm afraid to give him freedom. So we hamstring and we say, God, I expect you to be this way, and I expect you to do this, and I expect this, and I expect this, and I expect this. And then we turn around and say, man, he is so restraining. All those rules. He expects this and this and this. You're just projecting yourself upon him. Because that's what you do to him. You say, well, I expect you to be this way, this way, this way. But instead, how about this? Anything that happens, whether you perceive it as good or bad, that kind of goes back to John 9, whether you perceive it as good or bad or not, you say, God, you're God, you can do whatever you want. Trust. Right. That's trust. So verse 19, it says, for the people shall dwell in Zion at Jerusalem. Thou shalt weep no more. He will be very gracious unto thee at the voice of thy crying. When he shall hear it, he will answer thee. Okay, so he's listening intently. He's listening for what? For brokenness from us. Mm-hmm. All right? Because God doesn't usually move on us until we are broken. Right? And verse 20, and though the Lord give you, now I love that, give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction. Now, what's bread and water?
Life.
The very necessities of life. It's the basic stuff. So adversity and affliction are the basis of what you need. So when you go through adversity and affliction, this is a popular passage. I know you. I mean, what's the flavor of this passage so far? Humility on both sides. God's humbling himself. God's asking you to humble yourself. He's giving you. So bad things from our perspective are not the enemy necessarily. Now, it may be delivered by the enemy, but it's actually God giving you something that you desperately need. Because without adversity and affliction, there is no growth. There is no learning. You don't learn in when everything goes great, you've learned nothing. Does that mean that's bad when things go good? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that adversity and affliction are not as bad as we make it out to be. I've said this before. I may have said it in one Bible study at some point. But the two greatest gifts God ever gave you was pain and death. I think I've said that. And we've talked about that. What's happens when you can't feel pain? Well, that's leprosy. Things begin to get injured and you don't know it, and you rot. You get infections and your body begins to rot. It's literally rot in front of you. So God gives you adversity and affliction as the necessities of your growth and living. And then he says, I love this next thing, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner anymore, but thine eyes shall see thy teachers. So adversity and affliction become the teachers, become the instructors. And how many businessmen, how many millionaires, billionaires that are self-made businessmen or businesswomen have said, I've failed 5 or 6 times before I actually, but they had to go through those failures so they would learn. Well, that is just the staple of life. Your eyes shall see your teacher. So now you're looking, so God's bringing these things so he can teach you, take you to another level of understanding. The person who doesn't want any adversity or affliction in their life is going to be stagnant and unmoved and never appreciate the really deep and wonderful things of God. You'll never understand it. So when you go through something that's very painful, the more pain that's involved, the higher the learning, right? The higher the understanding. And I love this too as well, verse 21. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. When you turn to the left, turn to the right hand, and when you turn to the left. Now notice where the voice is coming from. From behind you, not in front of you. You can't see it. You cannot lay your eyeballs on it. You hear a voice behind you. Now, if you heard a voice behind you telling you to turn to the right and to the left, would you obey it? Let me put it this way. If a voice of a stranger said, turn to the right and to the left, would you obey it? No. But if a voice that you trust says, turn to the right, to the left, would you obey it? Absolutely. Think of walking on a very narrow ledge where you can't turn around and it's dark and you can't see, and a voice behind you knows the way, and you're trusting, right? That's the idea. That is, you hear the voice. So remember, this is how you be a king. You've got to listen. So that means you have to quiet yourself. You have to quiet everything around you. Listen intently to who's behind you, and make the turns as instructed. Now that's a tall order, isn't it? Oof. Man, I know I'm covering a lot, so if you got something, slow me down. If you want to interject something or have a question. So far I'm painting a pretty hard picture. Would you agree? Is it pretty hard?
Depends on the trust level.
Well, I think it's reality.
Yep.
I think it's what we have to learn to do.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at?
And there's only one way to learn these skills as a king. Gotta go through it. Gotta do it. Yeah, you can study all the strategies. You can study everything in books that you want to, but until you actually put it to use and to purpose, you're never going to really understand it. So you're listening. So back up. God's being gracious. He's being patient. He's being merciful. Now he's asking you to do the same thing. Start waiting on him. You know, you're going to be there's brokenness involved. You understand your teachers, what's teaching you. You're listening intently. A lot of cool qualities. Verse 22, you shall defile also the covering of thy graven images of silver and the ornament of thy molten images of gold. Thou shalt cast them away as a minstrel's cloth. Thou shalt say unto it, get thee hence. Now I won't go into, I think that's pretty explanatory what that is. It's basically the idea, what you used to value, what you thought was valuable, now becomes something disgusting. It becomes something that you don't want to keep. You don't want to hang on to. You want to get it away from you as quickly as possible. That's one of those passages where everybody goes, that's kind of uncomfortable to think about. But it really is a switch of what? It's not, the thing didn't change. What changed? What you value. So as a king, the things that you value are the things that God values. And the things that God values doesn't necessarily match up to the things that other people value. And what other people value, God may find disgusting. So what's actually happening here? You're becoming and thinking like God does. Right? You're now, as a king, you're beginning to rule and reign like he would if he was there. Verse 23, and then shalt he give the rain of thy seed, that thou shalt sow the ground withal, and the bread of the increase of the earth, and it shall be fat and plenteous. In that day shalt thy cattle feed in large pastures. So, kind of go back to what's that?
Well, you went into the minstrel's cloth. I just I went back and just did the word search, and it's
Yeah.
written as sick or in having sickness. So it's just see that as sick.
Yeah.
So it's specific.
Well, it's the minstrel's cloth is.
They think of sickness or sick. Well, it's a cleansing
Yes.
process, and everything has its purpose.
It does.
But so sick, so it's a sickness. So it's like something. I guess you have to think about that a little bit more in depth of like whatever that is that you're turning, it's not valuable anymore. Whatever
Right.
it is something. It's not healthy or good for us. Or
Right.
Depending on how you look at that.
Right.
That is it's a process though.
Right. But still, even things like that, even if you're talking about something other than the what it says there as far as in English, it's still not something you want. It's something you don't want to hang on to and keep.
Or faint or sick. That's what it's faint. Makes you weak. Maybe that's it. It makes you weak. That's what they think.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work.
It does make you weak.
Mm-hmm. So think about this whole process and you put yourself in Hezekiah's position, because if he makes the wrong choice, if he makes the wrong decision, if he goes down the wrong path, what happens? Is he suffering in a vacuum?
No. No.
The whole nation falls apart, and I mean they just saw Israel get taken and scattered by this massive army, and they were like, oh my goodness, we're next on the menu, and here they come, and what are we going to do? And maybe we could do this, or maybe we could do that. And all these ideas are thrown around. Maybe we need to go to Egypt, and they start really considering it. And God's like, you're starting to get on my nerves. What did I just do for you? What did I just show you through this big revival that you just had? And I use revival loosely, but you've basically come back to me. But now you got to go down there. That doesn't seem correct. So, but most people want verse 23 and 24. They want that. They want the plentiful. They want the produce. They want the blessing. But they won't go through the procedure
To get it.
Yeah. Once it gets hard, what usually happens when it gets hard? We fold up.
Yep.
Well, this ain't working. Are you,
So why did Hezekiah change? Why did he start questioning God? Because he started out handing everything to him
yeah.
and saw the rewards of doing that.
Yeah, the scripture doesn't really say what was the factor that made him go stupid. But
maybe he had to go through that so God could.
Well, that's part of bringing Sennacherib down.
Maybe it was a test.
Was to stir these ideas, right? It's a very dangerous thing when we have success.
Right.
When you get success, especially when you're talking about ministry or things like spiritual things, you get the success. Man, I just heard today about there's this. I don't even remember the name of the institution, but this guy who was the pastor began to get some numbers and get some success and everything else, and all of a sudden he started thinking more highly of himself than he should have, and a lot of things started happening, and now he's in some pretty deep trouble. And it comes back to when you get success, it makes you go down ideas and roads that you normally wouldn't go. And it makes you rely on yourself. It makes you start having all this produce, and you start getting all this where you don't have to necessarily depend on God as much. And God's like, okay, I'm going to make it so you have to depend on me. So can we learn that skill? Yes. How hard is it to learn that skill? How hard is it not to read your own newspaper clippings? You start getting some success. You start getting some pats on the back, and people start going, "Yeah, you're a great person." And you're like, you start thinking more highly of yourself than you should. Now, if God's going to treat you like all of the other kings, why wouldn't He? Then what does He have to do? He's going to do something to bring you back to reality. Yeah.
It's like another tool of the enemy. You have to always be aware. So always back to the Father, back to the Father.
Right. And why doesn't God do certain things in our lives? Maybe it's just protection. Maybe it's just, boy, I'd like it if this did happen, Oh, well, what if, we got this big following, or this happened, or that, that might be fine, but just be on your guard, because, man, if people start saying, yeah, you're the person, you're this or that or the other, just be careful, because that's usually when we start believing it. It's like God has to say, oh, yeah, it's
that way.
It's so easy to self-curl, so easy, and even in
It's like when something it has a good purpose, but we could get in there and mess it all up.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll give you a something subtle that curls back on us and we don't even realize it. Have you ever seen anybody that is so enamored or so heightened on sin? And I'm not saying we shouldn't think about sin, but they're so concentrated on it and getting on them that everything becomes about them, and it subtly turns back and curls back on themselves. Now, should we be concerned about sin? Obviously, but it shouldn't paralyze us, because the truth of the gospel is he's cleared you the whole way. So you can quit thinking about yourself. You can stop obsessing about yourself. Are you going to get dirty? Sure you are, because you're not going to take a step. You're not going to do anything without getting dirty. But there is a cleaning process, and you can ask those forgiveness, not necessarily for salvation, but more relationship and service is what you're looking for. So yeah, we can take anything in this life and curl it back upon ourselves very easily. And so what this passage does, for me anyway, is to help me understand and relieve me of the idea of, if God allows something to come into my life, it's not, my immediate thought isn't, what did I do wrong? My immediate thought is, God, what are you trying to teach me? You know, where are you trying to adjust my steps? Where are you trying to tell me to go? Where are you trying to direct me? Where am I going? And I think that has been probably the most beneficial. So hopefully what this does is give everybody opportunity to take these things, use them, and let it become a skill. So that, I mean, what kind of a person, have you ever seen anybody, you may have met somebody, and it's probably very rare, but that when something blows up, something comes threatening, they don't immediately just fall apart. They're just like, God's doing something. God's up to something. I mean, how would people perceive you if you became a person like that, or if you are a person like that? How do people perceive that? They usually are like in awe. How can you be like that? How can you not be freaking out? How can you not be?
It makes you think of Job. I mean, it's like
Very
it's
much
for
so.
someone else. If something's going on, he may not be doing anything, and this is for someone else, and for others, or things that it just, or whatever's going on is because of just like relation.
Yeah.
In just in general, just because you're whatever it is, you just
Yeah.
another picture to look at too. So.
And you know, people say, well, what was accomplished with Job? Well, if nothing else, we have it recorded.
Yeah, but like, and again, something I mean, probably in the last few years or so, it's just like something that kind of gets back to that. It's like, okay, this is you be still in your way, and what am I being taught? What's someone else being taught? Are we all being taught together, or what is this? You know?
Yeah.
A time of growth. Look at it as a time of growth or whatever.
And it is, and God's looking for those people who will fill this position and desire to move up into that understanding. Because think about Hezekiah when he first became king, right? His understanding was much less than when it was after all this happened. I mean, when he went through what we talked about with the priesthood and all that produce, and then Sennacherib comes down. Well, they had the Passover. Remember, we talked about the Passover and all that. You know, Hezekiah is changing through this whole thing. And so God's recognizing that at this point, this juncture, because Hezekiah was moving up in this understanding, God knew he had to bring this into his reign, into the kingdom, so that he could move Hezekiah to the next point, to the next level. So the fact that you may be going through something, you know, recognizing your position, because when you recognize your position as a king, you're recognizing that it's not just about you, it's about everybody else around you. Because what you do can affect so many people, right? So it's up to you, me, to take authority and say, God, I will be the king that you expect me to be. And I will depend upon you. I will not put my trust in anything else. That's where the gold, the silver, the horses, all that other stuff that God says, don't do that. Don't put your trust in that stuff. Put your trust in me. And when you're doing that, then God's going to say, okay, this is going to sting a little bit, because what I'm about to take you through is going to hurt. It's going to stab you to the heart, because now, you know, the enemy looks like he has the ability to take you apart. But you got to trust me, he can't. And you're like, God, you look like you don't know what you're doing.
Listen, remember, God is always in control. Even the enemy. It's like he says, things are there, but he's on leash.
Yep. Well, what this passage did for me, and this changed my praying. It's changed my prayers. My prayers turned into, and some people would call it disrespectful. My prayers turned into, God, You look like you don't know what you're doing. You look like you don't have a clue. But I know you do. And I'm going to trust you. It looks like I'm going to die. It looks like I'm going to be taken apart. I'm going to be killed. And everybody else around me. We're going to be scattered. But you know what? I'm going to put my trust in what you said. And that's why when Sennacherib came down, they threatened him at the wall. They sent him the letter. Hezekiah's, he's looking at this going to Egypt stuff. He's obviously considering it. He doesn't do it, though, and that's the good thing. He doesn't do it. And he lays this out before God and says, hey, man, this guy's talking to you. He ain't talking to me. It's up to you. It's your deal. And he just took back and rest. And did he sleep well? I don't know. Did he stay up all night? Would it matter? No. No amount of fret, no amount of pacing, no amount of losing, losing meals, none of that helped. Yeah, I'm not saying it did happen. I don't know. I'm just, I'm speculating. So when you look at the backdrop of what was going on at that time, and you read this passage, understanding what was happening with Hezekiah, it just, I don't know. To me, all the information just kind of jumps out. So, but anybody have any question? I don't want to belabor the passage, so I don't want to just keep going just because.
What just sounds like, God is trying to get us peace. There's a journey and a path, and something is always one that God has purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to choose to rest in it. It's a choice. You just do it. You could do it or not do it.
Right.
It's gonna be pain, but it could be more painful, or it could be something else, or you never get to where that to the next blessing, wherever it is that He's trying to navigate each of us individually, purposefully, to be what we need to be, being where He needs us, being something that's a good thing. So,
I think it's amazing that it's the same story.
It still points back to
where
it is. It's for His purpose.
The same story is told over and over again. You know this? The story that we're talking about with Hezekiah is the original story. It goes all the way back to the garden. That's what the tree of knowledge and good and evil was. God says, don't eat it, trust me. You give an explanation, didn't do anything. And so, the man and the woman, what'd they do? They said, we don't trust you. And they ate. Why'd they eat? Because they wanted to be gods. And God was like, dude, you already were. You just didn't know it. Now you're not. The very thing you went after, now you're not going to get. Isn't that funny? But now it's the same story told again. So, trust me. Egypt, they got a pretty good army. They got a pretty big. They know what they're doing down there. They've kicked some butt. They might be pretty good in a fight. I was like, no. You think they're going to be good in a fight, but I'm telling you, if you go down there, I'm going to make sure they're not good in a fight. And it's going to be the opposite. So, all right. Anything else? Pretty clear?
Clear.
All right. I hear nothing on our Denise.
So it felt like that
Well,
you made the.
What's that?
So, I can't help but wonder, how does this fit or tie in with Israel today? What's happening there? What's happening? Is this, Israel relies so much on us,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And, is that tie have to be broken so Israel can, I don't know. It's a puzzle
No,
what's
that's great.
happening in Israel today.
That's a great question. I wish I had a great answer, but I don't. But it does fit the pattern, though, doesn't it? It does.
Yeah.
It does fit that. What does Israel need to do, and what they had to do, and especially back in the 50s, 60s, especially in the 60s, there's a lot of stories where God miraculously intervened. But that's going to be the ultimate thing, though, where they're going to have to trust in God and Jesus as He returns, and He becomes their, He becomes what they put their trust in. And how's all that going to transpire? Does that mean we have to be taken out? I don't know. That's a great question. It's a great question. We'll see. Hopefully we get.
Yeah.
Hopefully maybe we'll get to see it. I don't know.
Well, we all know what the end results are of everything, so.
All right. All right. Anything else? All right. I appreciate it. I'm going to stop.